For thousands of years, humans have engaged in this beautiful and powerful activity of singing together. Here on How Can I Keep From Singing, we explore this topic in depth with song leaders and thought leaders, authors, people of all types who recognize how important singing together is, and in particular, in these times. My name is Stuart Stotts. I'm coming to you from rural Wisconsin, and my guests today are Dennis Donnelly, Kathy Baker, and Dick Jackson, who are all co-directors of the Community Choir Leadership Training in Victoria, BC. The training began in 2004 and continues to this day with a yearly program of a 2-week intensive in-person session and a full year of mentorship and ongoing network opportunities through the Ubuntu Choirs Network. They each bring a rich history of singing and directing choirs, and they each have a deep commitment to the empowerment and community that singing together creates. Welcome to How Can I Keep From Singing?
Great to be here with you, Stuart. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great to be here, Stuart. Thank you for this.
Can we just, one at a time, if you would just introduce yourselves in a little bit more depth, the background that you have, what brought you to doing this work?
I was a child of the 60s, discovered guitar and folk music in high school. When I was in high school, played folk music, and realized that one of my favorite things to do at a party was to get people singing with my guitar, probably songs of, I learned from Joan Baez or Bob Dylan or Ina Sylvia or whoever. Then I went on, long story short, to go to university in general arts. And then I discovered that, why am I doing general arts? I'm a musician. So I enrolled in the music program and got a Bachelor of Music degree in the 70s and got a job there at the local Conservatory of Music where I worked for 20 years, becoming the director. But I realized that I really wasn't interested in bossing musicians around. That really wasn't what I was really on the earth to do. Towards the end of the time that I was there in the late 1990s, a friend of mine, Siobhan Robinsong, started this non-audition choir in Victoria called the Getting Higher Choir. So she needed arrangements. I had the skills, so I started doing arrangements for her, and we became co-directors. And that all went forward, and then we had a choir of 100, then 200, then 300, then 400. People would come to us and saying, oh, we'd love to have a choir like this where we live, wherever it was in North America if they were coming to visit. And so we thought, why don't we share what we've learned about doing this kind of non-audition, socially responsible choir that has an alternate repertoire, that not singing songs by dead Germans or anything like that. So we created the CCLT program, and all of a sudden there must have been an energy out there somewhere in the cosmic records, because all of a sudden people found us from all over California and BC and other parts of Canada, and we had a full program that very first year, and we've kept on going except for a couple of years of COVID to this day, and it's wonderful to have this community around us. We continue on, God willing, and the creek don't rise.
Dennis, thank you. Kathy, what's your story?
I grew up in a family that had lots of singing opportunities together, and we sang those songs that were written in the 50s and 60s and before and after. Singing around campfire, in church, community, family gatherings. I grew up loving singing. A lot of it was a cappella. A lot of it was accompanied by guitar or hacking away on a piano. I was so hungry for harmony that there were times when there weren't other people to sing with. I've been known to hum a song while playing the recorder so I could play harmony with myself. While I loved singing with other folks, I felt like I wasn't brave enough to do the leading of it. My older sisters, had more of that role amongst us siblings. When the opportunities were there, I would, teach and share songs with friends. And it always felt so good, and it was always so fun that I've kind of always sought out those opportunities. Joining community choirs. But the best kind of thing I loved was singing around the campfire, casual stuff, just getting together in people's, with friends in homes, singing for singing's sake. When I moved to Victoria in 2002, I'd heard about the Getting Higher Choir, but had never joined it. And the stars didn't align until 2011. And when I finally joined this Gettin' Higher Choir that I'd heard of for so long. It felt like I had come home. That's how I describe it. Because of the kind of repertoire, we weren't standing in rows. We were in a great big circle. There was this repertoire that was so easy to catch on to with a big group and sing glorious harmonies. And it, even if I was exhausted after a day of work, I got to these choir practices and I came out just floating on a cloud of harmonic bliss. Then I heard about this community choir leadership training program because some of the students in it came and taught participants in the Gettin' Higher Choir. And what they were doing was so inspiring because there had been times when I tried to teach a song to friends that was a little bit, more complicated or nuanced, and I had a hard time. And it was like, these people teach you how to do that. How cool is that? Experiencing it, witnessing, I chose to take the program in 2016. And it might sound melodramatic, but honestly, it felt like taking that course changed and saved my life. And without going into all the details, it was a particularly difficult time in my own home and family life with things going on. And that marriage had come apart a number of years before. Singing in community like this, again, the home, the extended singing family, songs of healing and hope, lyrics that were healing, relationships that were close. There's something about singing together that forges bonds that sometimes chatting over a coffee or being work colleagues, it doesn't happen the same way. In fact, through the choir and through friends in the choir, this is how I met my now husband, Dick Jackson. I took the course in 2016. Dick took it the following year. I had ideas. I didn't know where it was going, so haven't looked back.
I've heard so many stories as I've done this podcast about people who would say that singing in many ways saved their lives through the community and the sense of personal empowerment and joy, all those kinds of things. So you're not alone, and yet it's a beautiful thing each time it happens. Dick, tell us who you are.
I grew up in Winnipeg, and there was singing around the house. My mom was never afraid to bring a song out, and singing in harmony was a pretty natural thing. And I sang in elementary school, choir. I was in the band in high school. After that, there was a great men's chorus at the University of Manitoba that I joined, and a concert band. So I kept involved in those sort of ways in community music. Eventually fell in with the opera chorus in Winnipeg as well, and that was a great way to stretch in different musical directions. And in work situations, I would often find friends who would get together to jam, pop music or swing, jazzy sorts of things. I enjoyed being in a semi-leadership role in those situations. I always loved watching the directors of the choirs or the opera chorus that I worked with. And I met Kathy in 2012. Was curious about the choir that she was in. And then, after she took the CCLT in 2016, we thought, who knows what might happen someday. So I took it the following year. And the opportunity came up when Dennis and Siobhan wanted to cut back a little on leading the Gettin' Higher Choir so many nights a week, which was 3 times. We were gently and graciously led into the leadership role there after Siobhan and Dennis had seen how we can work all right with groups of singers in different contexts. That's been a wonderful thing. Kathy and I have both changed careers to now be choir leaders and now involved with the leadership of the CCLT program. I've been able to bring some of my tech background. I was a software consultant for many years, and bringing some of the technologies into what we do, from the website to music scoring software. And during the COVID time, we kept our community going by doing virtual choir videos, and that meant asking people to record audio files as they listened to our guide tracks and so on. Mentioning what was said before, people finding music to be a lifeline. Certainly during those times, we had numerous people say, just keeping that connection once a week to learning new songs together with people, even on Zoom, was something that kept them going when they might have had no one else that they could connect with in person. We were able to be there and keep the community going.
When I heard about your training, I was astounded. I didn't know anything about it. And most people that I've talked with have come to this informally or under the inspiration of hearing different people. But the idea of a formal training in how to do this is wonderful. Could you tell me what you've got people for 2 weeks, as I understand it, and then there's follow-up. In those 2 weeks, what kinds of things are people doing?
It's been a basic model which Siobhan and I started in 2004, and it's based around two basic principles. One is we need to talk about the different bullet point things that we need to know as musicians, and how are songs constructed, how do we get them into people's voices. We talk about the difference in what we used to call the male and female voices. Now we call it more about the gender spectrum of voices. Talk about the business of running a choir. How do you charge for it? We talk about all those different things for where do you find repertoire. And this is pre-internet, really, when Siobhan and I were first doing this. So everything was more analog than it is now by a long way. So there's all of that goes on. And we also talk about things like we're putting ourselves in a vulnerable position too. So how do we get rid of imposter syndrome? How do we manage that in ourselves? When you're doing this, you're vulnerable. You're standing in the middle of a room. There's a huge vulnerability around that. So how do you deal with that? We don't want people to be little clones of what we're doing. We want them to bring themselves to the table, and whatever kinds of music they want to do is fine. That's what they need to bring. And so the major learning really takes place in the practice teaching that we do. We have 3 rounds, what we call them, of music, where people actually teach a song to the rest of the group that's there and get feedback on their teaching. And there's 3 times they do that. There's a 10-minute session, a 15-minute session, and a 20-minute session. And the 20-minute session involves people from our larger community who come in. And so they've got a real life experience of teaching a song and getting feedback. Yeah, so that's the basic nuts and bolts of the program. And then, of course, we try and stay in touch with people and make ourselves available following that. It's an amazing crucible of learning. All kinds of things happen, and people form relationships that they have for the rest of their lives as far as we've gone now.
2, 3, 4.
You're listening to How Can I Keep From Singing? My name is Stuart Stotts, and I'm talking today with members of the Community Choir Leadership Training. Is 2 weeks enough?
It's an ongoing thing. People don't come in starting from scratch. It is hard to encapsulate in words, and of course we do our best, and it's far more like rich in depth and interesting perhaps than, Dennis did eloquently put it, and there's way more to it. For example, in my own program, I kind of felt like the serious imposter syndrome, because a lot of my other cohort did have experience in actual song leading. And I had very casual experience, but there was the whole breadth. Because we're human, we sing, despite, some people being discouraged from doing so. So yeah, you can't do all of it in 2 weeks. People come with a certain amount of experience, but there are things or very often when somebody teaches a song, we can do a lot less speaking than we think we need to. So there's things about practicing introducing a song with as little talking as is necessary. If you've only got 10 minutes, people sometimes might be surprised that they spent 8 minutes talking about it and only 2 minutes actually singing. So we might try to coach and guide and help. So everybody is witnessing each other's learning and teaching as this goes on. We do try to share the lineage of a song, explain its cultural origins if they're not from our own, sharing with, respect and acknowledgement, how to use a pitch pipe, because believe it or not, key matters. Because if you pitch the song too high, some people might not be able to sing it. If you pitch it too low, same thing. So what's going to work well for the singers in your group? So is 2 weeks enough? Sort of, but not really. It's amazing what we do accomplish in 2 weeks.
And as we say, we encourage communication with us for at least a year beyond that as a mentoring time. And we have the means to communicate within that cohort that you've been with for that 2 weeks. And we also have a larger communication group for all of the graduates of the program. The amount of interweaving that happens there is a lovely thing to see.
Again, maybe it's, the imposter system that comes up for all of us. So even in this role as a mentor and leader of other people training and wanting to bring this work wider into the world, I know that people have a lot of options out there. For example, Lisa Littlebird had this fabulous program, the Song Leader Flight School, and there's other places where one can learn. There's experiences one can have, I've never been to a Singing Alive gathering, or I've never had the opportunity to attend one of Liz's amazing Song Village gatherings. I reached out and I asked people who have been to those, what's your thought? But, people who have also been to the CCLT. Mm-hmm. And I've asked, like, with your breadth of experience, how do you see these things fitting together? Each person basically said they've all been amazing. Like, they wouldn't have not done any of them. They're all good. But the immersive experience of being in a group for 2 weeks where you're witnessing and supporting each other's learning, getting immediate feedback coaching where you can apply it right away, and where there's many, many other opportunities to share, warm-up songs or songs over lunch or songs in the evening or songs because it's raining or songs because you heard a really loud noise outside or songs because of something that we know is going on in the world. And the closeness of the relationships, in their opinion, nothing replaces that. And we've wondered about putting this program online, and we realized that there might be some small aspects that we could do, but being there for that intense amount of time in person, nothing replaces that.
We do have reunions. We just had this summer, we had a reunion. We had over 40 people here from all over North America come and spend a whole week together. We had workshops, seminars, many, many singing sessions. It was ecstatic for a week. And we do that every 2 years. And during COVID, we had a couple of them actually online. But now after COVID, we can do them in person again. Yay. And now these are colleagues. We're in a collegial relationship with these people rather than a mentorship relationship.
So on the one hand, you're teaching logistics, how to get people in tune, how to charge, how to publicize, all those kinds of things. You're also dealing with some of the emotional issues that come up, which are very connected to everybody's voice in one way or another. So many people have been told they shouldn't sing or feel intimidated, and then leading songs is a whole other step in that direction. What do you find is the biggest challenge?
The whole reason Siobhan first started the Getting Higher Choir was she recognized the value of singing in community, and she really wanted everybody to have a place where their voice, no matter how it shows up, is welcome and is at home. When Dennis joined her a few years later, and during the orientations for the Getting Higher Choir, like it's kind of infused into the culture that we're collectively, we call it like a put-down free zone, without criticizing our own voice or anyone else's. And recognizing, talking about the vocal woundedness that some of us carry. Many people don't, but for those who do, it's extremely tender. The tenderness with which we welcome our collective, vulnerability, celebration, sense of welcome. So in some ways, the hardest part might be getting people to not criticize their own voice, or just being able to talk about that. Because, and I forget who coined the phrase, somebody talked about the phrase of either like technologies or methods of human connection, which have been with us forever: drumming, dancing, storytelling, singing. So when somebody is told that they couldn't or shouldn't sing, it's as if they're being told, you're not quite as human as the rest of us. And that's, I think, why it feels so deeply wounding.
What's your perspective on the growth of this movement, the national and international kinds of connections?
Well, it's been remarkable to see how many choirs. I mean, in our experience here in Victoria, there's a blossoming of community choirs. Any given time of day that you want to sing or any style of music, there is a group here for you. And there's room for more. One of our mantras is, a rising tide floats all boats. And the interest in connecting people with one another through singing. It's just an idea feels like time has come, and it's all across the world, really.
I think especially today, there's a hunger for connection. You don't have to look very far. You don't even have to try to look. We get bombarded with divisive messages. The little devices that most of us have such easy access to are very addictive. It can be easy to think the world is worse than it actually is. That hunger for connection, because some of the traditional ways of connecting, you can look at things like church attendance, just pulling that one out of the air, is plummeting over the years for lots of compelling and interesting reasons. But people, humans still need a place to connect and feel like they belong. I think that's part of it, because of the kind of deep connections that can be formed through creative expression together, which music is. We don't necessarily hear about all the living room song circles that are going on all over the place, or the camp out gatherings where singing is a focal point. I think it has a lot to do with our collective need and hunger for connection.
I think we're running parallel lockstep with what Kathy's talking about here in terms of the repertoire. When Siobhan and I started this program, I was doing most of the arranging for the people coming to the program. And now there's been this astonishing blossoming of people writing socially responsible, socially relevant songs now that are easily taught to people without formal musical background in, 10, 15 minutes. You've got this incredible ability to share all of this stuff on the internet, with email, with everything else that we've got technologically now to support us, which didn't really exist when we started, neither the technological abilities or the repertoire. As we have become more of a technologically based culture with our headphones and our blinkers on, this is balancing, maybe hopefully in some ways balancing a little bit that tendency to bring us apart, to take us apart, which is maybe what corporate identity would want us to do, so they can manipulate us, but we can actually counter that with our coming together, and singing is one way that we can do that. We've been doing that since we've been in the caves, and why not continue?
I have a question that I always like to make sure I ask. You're going to a song circle of some kind. What are 3 songs that you feel like are real winners when it comes to group singing?
One comes to my mind is a song by Melanie Demore, Lead with Love, which is a lovely, simple message of carrying on with hope in spite of whatever else is going on.
Amongst all the ones that are fighting for attention in my head, a very easily accessible one by Michael Stillwater. I think I heard it the first night I joined the Getting Higher Choir. One by One, which is like one by one, everyone comes to remember we're healing the world one heart at a time.
Do the best you can until you know better, and when you know better, do better. Do the best you can until you know better, and when you know better, do better. You can add little harmonies to it too right away.
Yeah, sorry, those are the words of Maya Angelou.
My guests today have been Dennis Donnelly, Kathy Baker, and Dick Jackson. Thank you very much for joining me.
Thank you, Stuart, for your bringing this kind of consciousness out into the world.
You've been listening to How Can I Keep From Singing, a production of Common Arts. My name is Stuart Stotts, and my guests today were Dennis Donnelly, Kathy Baker, and Dick Jackson of the Community Choir Leadership Training.